Hey, everybody, welcome to the Ethics Experts. If it's your first time joining us, welcome. And if you're a returning subscriber, hey, bestie, your beautiful smile makes this world a better place. You see what happens when you subscribe? You get a bonus greeting on every single episode. On this episode, we talked to the one and only Todd Gower. He is a mentor extraordinaire. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. He has a lot of great frameworks on how to be calm in the face of chaos and how to really build a mentor network, a constellation of mentors around you so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome to the Ethics Experts, where we're elevating ethics and compliance and HR to the strategic level it's supposed to be.
Welcome to the Ethics Experts. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'd love to get started just kind of talking about, this importance of mentorship. We just got back from Compliance Week. There was a lot of talk about mentorship, and it really is a topic that I think a lot of us need to engage in a little bit more, both in terms of getting mentors and like pushing mentorship out to the people that we come in contact with.
Okay.
So,
yeah,
go ahead, please. No.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think one of the things I found early in my career, be it in compliance or in my path was on the financial governance side versus a lawyer side or auditing, but more on financial governance. Having a mentor along the way was extremely helpful. And, it helps you bounce off those ideas so you just don't make mistakes of saying that wrong email, saying that one thing, like how to handle pressure. Because as you go further up in the role, it's necessary to understand what's your release valve, and you have to be able to make sure you manage that. Your emotional intelligence as an executive is so highly important. Manage that intelligence is highly important. So having good mentors that help you along the way for that as a partner will do you well. So
how did you find mentors along the way? I mean, I find a lot of people struggle with finding mentors either because they, and I think it might be rooted in not having like the courage to just ask for the help. How were you able to get kind of a constellation of mentors that helped you along the way?
Yeah, that's a great descriptor, constellation. And I think it is really based on some of my faith. When I go to church, you had those kids were kind of misbehaving, and you have that one person that go, hey, how can I be better, right? And it gets back into, as a leader, it's okay to ask for help. It is. You don't know all the answers. So what I found is I would look at some of the leaders that I would align myself with and work with them and have meaningful conversations of just get to know them, like what made them successful. And a lot of times I got into having a good mentor or a good partner. There's partnership at home that's helpful too. A good family background in the space is also helpful. Being in an environment where you're part of a fraternity and you're, that connection, if you will, is there, or school pride. That also exists. So there's those natural connectors. But you think about when you don't have all of that and you're out there alone in the foxhole as a new leader, and you go, how the heck do I navigate this? Well, one of the things I learned is reaching out to the C-suite. When I was a young MBA student there at Kaiser, the CFO and I got to know each other because of the work I was doing already within the organization. I said, can we go have lunch? He goes, sure. Most times I found, most of the C-suite, if you just asked, can I please give 15 minutes? Sure, why not? Because at the end of the day, I like that. Okay, Todd, can I just have time with you? Love to. What do you want to talk about? And it emboldens us to say, okay, we have a responsibility to make sure we don't do anything stupid, say anything stupid or inappropriate. And also, you're having that person's future in your hands. And so you want to make sure you're being mindful about what kind of guidance you provide them. And it makes you feel more vulnerable in a way, but also forces you to act professionally and want to think professionally. So it's that part as you've had that, if you've had that experience of being mentored, giving mentorship back is a lot of fun. And so I enjoy that. I'm part of all the mentorship programs that I can at all the other companies I've been with. But the best one I had throughout my career was either when I was at Marriott, when I was at Kaiser. Became good friends with all these gentlemen who were my mentors along the way. It's a lifetime of a connection that, stays with you, which is very special. So.
Yeah. And, I always say you get no bonus points for reinventing the wheel. Like, you don't get a bonus point for being like, hey, look at this. And everyone's like, well, that's like a wheel. There's wheels everywhere. But I think, and to your point, I've never reached out to somebody for help or to get advice and I just haven't had doors slammed in my face. I think, to your point, when you go to somebody who is further down the path than you, and you want to ask them what made you successful, like, who doesn't like to hold court and pontificate, and inevitably they end up sharing their mistakes with you. And,
they do. Absolutely. Right, Nick.
Go ahead, please.
Apologize. I stepped over you.
No, we got a little delay, but it's all good. I did find, though, I worked in a big corporation when I first came out of school, and they had kind of these forced mentorship things where, like, I get a mentor, and I found, like, the quality of those interactions, and, like, I'm taking some responsibility because I probably didn't come to those and really, like, wring as much value out of those conversations as I could. But I found that sometimes, like, when it's forced, it's just not as, like, organic. And, like, but you talked about two massive companies, Kaiser and Marriott, where you got a lot of value probably on either side of that fence. Do you have any, like, insights on how someone who's maybe a mentee in one of those programs, or perhaps a mentor in one of those programs, can, really, like, extract as much value from those interactions as possible?
Yeah, one of the things that I gathered from all this is, like, what exactly do you want to get out of it, right? And if it's only just to have a buddy at work, it's not going to be as successful. If you're trying to help navigate your career, that's another. And so one of the things I took from this as a mentee, and one of my mentors, he still lives life, wonderful gentleman, he was the regional finance leader for Marriott and for one of the regions. But he liked to go running, and I was a decent runner in my time. And we go running to talk about stuff. And they go, okay, good. So we go open a new hotel, take over a hotel. Hey, Todd, you're going to be there? Great. Let's go running. And so those are opportunities for me to have those conversations before or during or after the run to talk about, I don't know what this other controller is doing. I don't know what this GM's doing. So from that, I learned a bit more about how I should navigate this. Even from my time in the military as a young officer, you had those mentors to help you along the way as you make rank.
Right.
Especially in artillery, it was part of the support combat arms, but it's a little different. And when you go into the corporate world versus the military, it's different. So I'm very proud of my time in the service, mostly National Guard and Reserve, but I can't replay that those times where if I didn't ask, it was my fault. So to your point earlier, how does it feel to be a mentee? And coming prepared is really key. The great thing about ChatGPT now is great to help folks navigate that. They're not leveraging that information or outside resources. What are good questions to ask? If the organization does not have a program, large, small, LA Care has a great mentor-mentee program. We do. I'm part of it. I'm part of the mentorship program there. And I have a new mentee. And so now we have an agreement between each other. What do you want to get out of it? Talk about frequency. How do you want to be engaged? What are some of the things you like and don't like, especially around language and tone and tenor and everything else about how you communicate are really key. But what exactly do you want to get out of it? And that's going to be key. And it's not like you're trying to pull something from somebody, but they're actively asking for help. And it's being supportive to that, and make sure you're the right mentor. A lot of times I've been very fortunate. I've had zero bad mentors. I've had bad bosses. I won't name them, but we all had them in our careers. And so you think about those are mentors, but the mentor helps you kind of navigate those instances where you have some difficulty in dealing with the boss or dealing with an executive, dealing with the board, being a board member for some small companies or startups. They all have their uniquenesses and culture. And so the more and more you have those experiences, you can help understand the culture you're trying to build with them, and also help them understand how to navigate that. So it's important. You have a responsibility to have a verbal contract or a written contract to say, make sure you keep in line and you get value out of it.
I was talking to someone who had this person that they wanted to be their mentor, but they were a little reticent to engage with them because they didn't feel like they could bring any value to the conversation as like a mentee or somebody who was like, not as far down the path. Like what would you say to somebody who's, scared to knock on the door, I guess?
That's a great question. And I've had some of those folks. And as a leader, sometimes if you're seeing someone and they see great promise in an individual, reaching out, how are you doing? I think it's incumbent upon leaders to also look at their teams within them. I'm very fortunate. I've got over 100 some odd folks on my team. And I've had large teams up to 300 or so, or small of 5, right? But there's always that one person that is feeling not part of the team.
Yeah.
And how do you reach out to them? And I think I can't tell someone how to feel. I can't tell someone you got to do it. They're afraid. But if they feel they don't add value, think again. Everyone has a story. Everyone does. And we have this conversation with my team and all my execs and my leaders that I work with. We've gone through a trough and valley exercise. Like, what are the high points in life? What are some down points? Pick one, pick a two. I mean, all of us, especially within our age range, a lot of them have lots. And I think it was helpful for everyone to understand what was important to them, what was a bad point in life.
Right.
And we all got normalized and going, holy crap, they're human beings, right? And you got to do that with your team. And sometimes you can't get out of them, but as a leader, you've got to start thinking about that. And if you're not part of that team and there's a little mentee that goes, hey, you're seeing out there, I tell the mentees who are looking for this, seek it out. I tell some of this for some folks, go on LinkedIn, find the job you like to be 2 levels up, 3 levels up. See what job exactly do you want to do? What exactly do you want to do? If you're just still flaring it out, reach out and talk to other leaders. A lot of times, I did this too in my career, reaching out to other companies as I was trying to make a change. And I went from hotels into hospitals to health plans into general management, to going into the government and getting into consulting. I reached out to those individuals, leaders in those companies, to say, what's it like working there? Why did you choose this career? To help me through that. Then it became part of a program for me to understand and be mentored by those individuals who are still my friends to this day.
Yeah. And it gives you, it helps you like underwrite the investment. I mean, it's an investment in your career. Many times we just like jump onto a new ship without, getting a sense for like how this ship creaks and stuff. You know what I mean?
Oh, I've been there. Yeah. And quite frankly, it's such a great experience. If you don't look back on that as saying, wow, you failed. You chose the wrong ship. Not that the ship was bad. You just chose the wrong ship to be on.
Right.
It was working fine. It's not because of you. So a lot of times it's personality. A lot of times it's the wrong fit. It's just don't let sometimes you got to take a job for the money. I get that too. But I think if we're talking about professionals, which are on this podcast here, the most important thing I found is thinking about your career. Where do you fit? Where do you see your career? Where are you in your career path? And if you are a chief or you made chief and you feel alone, it is a lonely role. You're in there. You can't go complain to HR. You really can't complain to the board. Our roles as chief compliance officers or chief ethics officers is enterprise wide.
Right.
It's not operations. It's enterprise wide. So you have to be careful. So who do you go to? You got to talk to somebody, therapist, great, but a mentor of a like company or someone that is important to you to help navigate those challenges is really key. So even I have one. I have a mentor, that whole program. So
I love what you just said. In ethics and compliance, it's enterprise wide. And I'd love to kind of dive into a little bit of how this passion you have for mentorship has helped you become a better compliance officer. And, I find that the best mentor-mentee relationships that I've been a part of, there's really a lot of trust in that. And there's a lot of trust in those relationships. And I find that, just in general, you see someone sort of from a distance and maybe they're like very successful, or they're, for me, like they're older than me or something, or whatever. And from a distance, you just sort of see this sort of two-dimensional facade. But then when you get to talk to them, you start to see like, oh, this is just a guy that happened to be born before me, or this is just a guy that, to your point, has these highs and these lows. And again, to your point, we're all kind of going through the same human experience. So how has this, these experiences in, the sort of inherent mentorship that's very structured in the military, and this this magnetism you've had, or this attraction you've had to this thing called mentorship, helped you be a better compliance officer in terms of building trust in these different, departments that we have to interact with and have relationships with to do our job?
Yeah, and having the responsibility of being in an operation is one thing, and being enterprise-wide role, I learned early on, which I had my failure points. I had a responsibility to have good stakeholder engagement, collaboration with leaders. And when I didn't do that, I found failure points. And you'd see that happening where you go, who is this person again? Why am I talking to you? And you go through that experience, you go, I just talked to you several months ago, but everyone's busy. Right.
Right.
How do you maintain that engagement protocol? And surprisingly, it's just as very simple. How do you look at frequency, for one? Secondly, with the role, with what I have, is not being able to, if I didn't think about that, and I didn't want to be, if I wanted to be in a silo and just work alone, you really want to be successful. So for me, I realized early on, in order to be successful in the space, cross collaboration, cross-departmental, making sure that you stay relevant, reaching out, touch points, communication is key. So I think for me, collaboration and stakeholder analysis, understanding who are the key persons in your circle within your executive team that you need to work with. You have to, especially in our role, legal office, CFO, all the C-suite's part of your decision tree, but there's some that really you need to collaborate more with than others. And that can help you along the way. You know what? I need to get something passed that needs to get everyone to buy into to make sure we do these things we're supposed to do. So you have your inner circle team to help support that. And they communicate out. And then they communicate out. It becomes this sort of spanning tree of support. You can't do it alone. You just do it. And if you don't want to do this, then the success for that is lower. There's a higher risk of being less successful. So I think that's where, for me, it's why I learned early on that cross collaboration was truly key. And I made some major mistakes in my career by not doing that, by thinking, because I said so, you should be doing this way. That's not right. So if that helps.
No, that absolutely helps. And I think that's right. I think there's so many, because ethics and compliance is such a complex, it's such a complex function to be able to do right. That means that there's a lot of ways to do it wrong. You know what I mean? And, I think there's this tendency to get siloed. There's a tendency to just respond to all the fires and the to-do lists and all the emails. And sometimes it's hard to break out of that silo and build the relationships and build those kind of collaborative partnerships that you're talking about, which can lead to the influence that is inherently necessary for us to be successful in the job. On the other side of it, you just mentioned this sort of positional authority thing that we fall into. I mean, many people in compliance, they want to get that chief title. And I went through something like this when I became, co-CEO of this organization that I'm a part of, where I kind of had this expectation that now I have my royal scepter and I just sort of speak and then people do things. And I've realized very quickly that the power to the extent that power is defined as people doing things that you want done, is driven way less by a title and way more by this influence thing. Would you agree with that?
I totally agree with that. I think one of the things that I realized early in my career, that influence is truly important. And so how do you do that, right? And that's through influence without authority, or driving a culture of change. Or when I lived and worked in Panama, for example, I had to make sure I got a team together where I didn't speak the language really well to understand that I need to get stuff done. Well, I couldn't be the bipolar American just start screaming and be happy. So I couldn't do that because I was frustrated because of my language skills. They got better later on, but I saw that frustration because I wasn't learning to collaborate well or influence without this. So I learned quickly on in my career in my late 20s, early 30s, like, okay, I got to do this. I've got to be, as an officer, it's one thing, it's bidirectional. Boom.
Sure.
It's right. Or zero, right? You can't do it in corporate America. And even in the military, it's changed too, by the way. But I think now it has. But I think the idea is as leaders, because you become a chief, whether you're a chief CFO, CEO, COO, just because you say doesn't mean it happens. You still have to work with people to make it happen. And right. And because everyone's busy. I mean, quite frankly, if I tell operations, you're in trouble, like, okay, great. Let's stop with the corrective action plan. Okay, how do we handle it? Well, Todd, I got other meetings to deal with. I got the State Department coming in, or the Department of Healthcare coming in tomorrow, or DOJ's coming in and talk to me. You're low on the totem pole. Well, I need this really badly. Well, you know what? Here's how I help you. I help type up the response. I'm supportive. Read it real quick for me. So there's a way of working with the individual. They start seeing that you're being collaborative versus one way, directional, saying thou shalt do it this way. You get more. You get better feedback, better support, and then you get better collaboration going forward. So
yeah, and better buy-in.
Total buy-in. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and you said something kind of hidden in what you just mentioned. Here's how I can help. And I think to your point, like if we're coming in and we're like, hey, I need you to do this, that's just one other thing on the to-do list that now is running through the algorithm of like, what's the biggest fire? Where to your point, if you can say, hey, I talk about it, or like an example of this is like trying to get that tone from the top to engage in the program. It's one thing to say, hey, it'd be great if you could say some words. And it's another thing to say, hey, it'd be great if you can say some words. I typed something up that might be something to get started with, right? Or if you're coming into HR and you're saying, hey, there's not enough in the onboarding program, there's not enough sort of ethics stuff in there. You should fix that. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is say, hey, we might want to consider this. And here are a few slides to like put in there, and let them sort of massage it and shave off the edges and put it in their words or whatever. But again, like to the extent that we are this sort of support function, this guardian function that is meant to be this circulatory system, like you said, it's sort of cross-departmental across the business. We have to figure out a way to like put the ball in the net. And we can't do it from that positional authority. I mean, maybe you can if your company's culture is, a very sort of top-down power culture. But in today's environment, it doesn't seem like that's how you get traction.
You don't. It is a teamwork, and I know people talk about this with our family at work. It's like, well, family treat people differently than family do with your colleagues. And I'm saying that nothing derogatory about that, or funny about that. But it is different. It's a teamwork environment. You have a leader that's in top, but they're helping direct or be a conductor. You have to do it. And you can't have the entire orchestra be led by the violinist or the flautist.
Love that.
Or the clarinet. You have to work together to make the music happen. So otherwise, if you don't, then nothing happens. And so then if you tack on the ballet with that too, holy crap. And then you tack into the opera on top of that too, singing and dancing at the same time, like Broadway. It all has to work together. If you don't, it won't be successful. So we take a different approach with my team. Everybody, we have mentors, we have touch points. I do skip level meetings to make sure, even down below my team, what's going on, because you just never know. Not to check in on people, but you can't. You can also, if you're a large corporation like we have, you'd be mired in meetings all day long about meeting with people. But you got to pick and choose, and I think it's important. In order to do that, you got to find a way. It's like, okay, who's going to be influencing you? Who's going to help you with the decision making? Who's going to you need to inform, like, what's your RACI, right? And I think that's important as you move up the ranks and being a chief, is really understand who are the folks you need to help them be successful too, but who are going to help you influence what you need to do for a culture of compliance or ethics and driving that.
That approach, I think, is at some level, well, it's obviously a lot more effective, right? Because these companies are just voluntary collectives of people who choose to show up every day, right? I mean, we all have mortgages and stuff, but like you have to make the decision to drive in your car to work or to open your laptop if you're in a hybrid position. So like nobody's forced to do any of these things. So it's definitely more effective. And it also can be a lot more fun, I think.
It is.
But you know, if you go back to that Eisenhower matrix, a lot of the stuff you're talking about, these like skip level meetings, you know, taking the extra step of doing some extra work to get someone to do something, that's, you know, that time is in that sort of important non-urgent bucket that often gets sort of deprioritized in a highly reactionary environment, which these positions can often fall into that sort of trap. So like, how do you maintain carving out enough time for these important non-urgent things that are the true needle movers, the true points of leverage, and not getting sort of caught up in the chaos of, you know, all the crap flying around and the fires to put out?
Yeah, time management's key, extremely important. And so, you know, being a Six Sigma guy, how do you take out the waste in your day? And so it's hard. It's hard.
And you're like a unicorn. You're Six Sigma, military, finance. I mean, you've really got a lot of really cool tools in your tool set.
It is fun. And so it's what's great for me too, when I get with as an advisor to some boards, I see some CEOs going sides like, dude, come here, or whoever it may be. I normally do, but helping them through the process, like, you know, you're not being a good team player. What do you mean? And so one poor CEO, we worked with him, and I was an advisor, and the feedback was, this guy really can't drive you. You know, he's not going to even cross the chasm. He can't even get close to the chasm, you know? And I think for me, carving out time is truly critical. And then it's because it's my passion. I enjoy what I do. And if you're doing a job, just do the job. It's one thing. But if you don't go to a job and you have a passion for it, then, you know, think about another career change. It's okay. You know, and I think for me, I truly enjoy what I do. I'm working till 10, 11 o'clock sometimes at night, and get up early morning, go to my coffee clutch with my friends. And then we talk, and a lot of these guys are leaders too, of the companies. We have Chatham rules. That's it. And then we go back to our laptops or get in the car, go where, and then be able to kind of carve out time to make sure you do the work you need to do. And it's a lot of it is time management, and it's a sacrifice. And I think I've made those sacrifices in my career. Some have been beneficial for me, and some I felt the mistakes from that and learned how to be better time managers, especially for family. Can't ignore family. That's important. So
yeah. I love what you just said because, well, for a lot of reasons, but many times like discipline at its surface can feel like constricting and almost limiting. But I found like as I get more disciplined, there's just so much more freedom in it. You have time to exercise. You have time to collaborate with your buddies. You have time for family. You can stay more balanced, which is great. But then it also gives you this sort of this opportune time for yourself to work on problems. Like as a runner, I'm sure you had some of your best ideas when you're just like running down the street by yourself. But like you have to carve that time out, and it's one of these spends of time where you don't see the direct like return, you know? I mean, if I pull a rope on a pulley, like, okay, if I expend this effort, this bucket is going to go up. It's the value that comes from carving that time out is sometimes a little bit more serendipitous or like a little bit more amorphous. And I find myself, I sometimes struggle maintaining these, you know, carve outs of time to give myself that kind of a benefit, you know?
Yeah, I have a dear friend I work with at LA Care, and he's a tremendous, he's just a very interesting gentleman. And I wish I could be like him. So he handles a lot of our provider network, and he managed that as our chief of staff, but also carves out time to do his music. And I'm trying to relearn the piano as well, but he still sings, still plays the guitar, writes music, and still tries to manage our highly delegated network within LA Care. And it's astounding. I go, how do you do discipline, man? But again, there's some things you have to give up. But he's so close to his kids. And there's this way of like, so he's been kind of like a mentor to me in a way. And we're both peers, but you have to kind of have that individual. And there's a bunch of the folks on our team are all unique in how they balance the stress of managing a complex healthcare system like we have in LA. It's just LA, mind you, but it's a good sized organization. And you go 2.5 million members, about 11 to 12 billion in revenue. And you go, it's not a small puppy. So it needs a lot of care and feeding. And so you have to manage that. And every single exec on our team has other interests. And if we don't, you will not be sick. You'll explode. Right. You have to have it. You have to have an outlet somewhere. It's like if you have a pool, that little release valve where you prime the pump, let the air go out. So you need something to release, and it's got to be healthy. I do recommend healthy outlets versus taken to non-healthy ones. And I think about that with my family. With my new family. I made it. Obviously, I always have made choices in life, and so I've made an acknowledgement that I need to make sure I protect that and set those boundaries. Like you said, it's freedom. When you start thinking, hey, cool, laptop goes down. We're going to talk about work at dinner. It's family time. How are you guys doing? Right. So it's important to carve that out. It's disciplined.
I always think that like mastery in any field really comes down to knowing what matters and what doesn't matter. And I found that when I get into a new role or I'm kind of doing a new challenge, it's hard to sort through, maybe this is circling back to like mentorship, but like, it's hard, it seems like everything matters. When I was first in financial services and we would be doing, financial due diligence engagements for, potential acquisitions, some new partner, a guy who just ascended to partner who was new, it seemed like we would have to look under every freaking rock. And then there was another, other partners who were, so well seasoned, our reports would be smaller and we'd really be zeroed in on that sort of Pareto, these 20% of issues that are, these 20% of factors that are going to cause 80% of the issues. It's been interesting though, to see how some people can kind of ascend out of that. Everything matters. And I'm just, in a panic mode all the time, and others who are able to kind of get through that J curve and start to see some of those patterns. And, I think to get up that J curve faster, mentorship obviously is helpful, but how do you deal with the bearing of your soul? I'm speaking for myself. Sometimes I feel like stupid asking questions. Like I feel like some of these things I should know given the spot that I'm at or the position that I'm in. If you've ever felt that kind of a way, how have you built a muscle that allows you to like get the help you need faster to get up that J curve faster and look at your life or the problems that you're facing with like a clearer lens?
Yeah, I was very fortunate when I was asked to come on board to help support LA Care. And I took the leap of faith, if you will, like I want to do this. I knew I had a lot of changes to make. And the gentleman who retired, a dear friend, that took over his role. Well, of course, everyone has their own style of leadership and how they want to take their organization, what needs to get done. And knowing that, had that pressure, like, okay, what are you going to do in the first 100 days? And as a seasoned leader, all of us have it in our toolkit, if you've been doing it for a while, what do you need to do the first 20, 30, 90, 60, 90 days? You have them rattle in your head what you want to do. And for me, the most important thing I had to do was make sure people don't feel that I am frenetic, that bringing calm to a change, because that allowed me to not have to have people go, I want out. Because you don't want that sort of churn happening in your organization, because then you got to hire new people. And maybe if the whole team really need to go, it'd be different, right? Or you're doing a takeover and an acquisition activity, which I've been, where the entire team gets fired and you got to go and interview everybody new when I was doing stuff for Marriott. But in the situation I was in, I knew all these people were really important. I had to take time to assess them, find the right people to help me with that process, to say, okay. And all these folks are all well-meaning. They're all there for the mission. They're all here for the vision. So we obviously did a good job of our hiring program and our HR department to say, why are you here? If you can't answer that question, why are you here, in a meaningful way, it's like, I can take, hey, I just need a job. I really love compliance. I really love this health plan. I'm an LA Medicare and Medicaid person. I want to be here, right? What I can't stand is someone who goes, I don't know, really. So do you go, okay, how do you deal with that? don't let it be distraction, but you'll deal with it later. And I think the idea there is, as you mentioned, in the J curve and getting ramped up, because I knew that my boss, the CEO, might be retiring soon. And every CEO comes in with their own thoughts and go, what's your roadmap? So I put my people through a very similar process. Like, let's think about our strategy together, not just my vision. I had my vision, but how do you work with everybody together to make sure we're on the line with a vision along with the company? Just in case if the new CEO came aboard, we can pivot quickly, which we have been able to as a result, because our new CEO is wonderful. And she gets it. She's got a consulting firm in there to help us out, think things through, to develop a strategic roadmap because of all the changes that are happening. And as a leader, you have to think about, how do you deal with strategic changes? How do you deal with all of a sudden you think you're in charge? Now you're not. You just got acquired by somebody, and now you're one CEO of that company. Now you're a subsidiary, the roll up.
Right.
Oh. So now you got to play ball with everybody. And I think you're right. It's the most important thing is that's when you have your mentor going, oh my God, what do I need to do? Everyone, it's okay. Calm down. What's that person doing? That's standard. Don't freak out. It's okay. The worst thing you could do is freak out right now and act paralyzed. And so that's where mentorship can help that process too, or a good partner at home or wherever, a friend, is super important as you kind of navigate those waters of change.
Yeah. I mean, you said something in the beginning of our conversation that really resonated with me, is that our roles can be very isolating, and it's brutal, right? Like, there's few people that you can go to without, because you're supposed to be this calm in the chaos. You're supposed to be this calm in the storm or the change or whatever. And man, like, when I'm by myself, I can turn into a lunatic. I need someone to kind of balance me out and give me that different perspective. And kind of to your point, like, if we're not disciplined with our time or disciplined with our actions, and we're not creating space for that, then the odds of us reaching our potential is like zero. You know what I mean?
It is. It is zero. And then you fail, the team fails, everyone fails, and you go, what happened? I don't know. And for us, publicly, we have to deal with an enforcement matter, which we are dealing with, which means everyone's looking at us with a microscope. And so you have those activities and going, look, guys, the worst thing we can do is do nothing. We are going to do something. We're going to be organized, right, and show our best and be respectful and responsive. And so we're going through that right now. And I think the most important thing I can do and try to stay calm and collective with my team, especially as a chief, especially in compliance and ethics, people are looking at you. This are, whether you're wearing your badge as whatever that company to being plain clothes on a Friday, it's 24/7, quite frankly, unfortunately. And as you know, as a co-CEO, it doesn't change. You're still, you may get the phone call at 2:00 in the morning, at 3:00 in the morning, like we happened in LA. What do we do? Crap. I'm responsible for launching the business continuity disaster recovery plan with my team, with all of the other chiefs. All right, guys, we got fires. What do we do? Right. And so it's just, it is what it is. You have to want to do it and love it. I enjoy it. It is isolating, but you have really good teams that support you, good leaders, choose good leaders, or make good leaders too. And you find those diamonds in the rough that want to grow and learn, but that's a responsibility. You can't make bad leaders. You can. I've seen it. And I've been given bad advice before and going, thank God, I knew that was the wrong thing to do.
I could tell in my gut. Yeah.
It's like, this is not good. You know what? That's okay. I'm out, and that happens. Or they help you too. Because you know what? You just don't work with them. They see that, and that's okay. It's natural and it's going to happen. So.
Yeah. Every piece of Velcro doesn't fit on every other piece of Velcro.
That's right.
That's okay.
That's okay. Trust me. Yeah, exactly.
But you said, back to your analogy about like the orchestra and the ballet and all that stuff. It's like, you got to get, like, when an orchestra has practiced playing from that same song sheet and they can really play well together, well, then you can give them a new song sheet and they can play that song, well, a lot faster. Right. And I was just kind of thinking about that in the context of like, whether it's, you're a standalone company that now becomes part of a a conglomerate, or you're, kind of a subsidiary now, and now you got to sing from that new song sheet, or something happens and you're doing disaster recovery or something like that. When people are already singing from that same song sheet, the odds of performing appropriately in a time of stress like you're talking about is so much higher. You know what I mean?
It is. And being prepared. One of the things that, as my CEO said, Todd, I need you to make sure we're prepared. Readiness is important, especially for an audit. We're constantly being audited, right? And it's just the nature of healthcare. But readiness in the military was important too, especially and you train, making sure, hey, you got a downtime, let's break track, let's clean our weapons, let's look at our vehicles, make sure everything's ready to rock and roll, because you just never know. Right. And it's ready. But you can't always be on high alert constantly. So you have to learn how to have some fun too along the way, and have the get-togethers and make sure we can socialize and the release valve. Okay, let's get back together again. It's so funny. The last several times we've had connections finishing a disaster, DR BCP plan, and something happens. Well, because we were prepared, we were able to respond to it. Just as we collaborated, changed things. CrowdStrike happened, Optum happened, the fires happened. Like a week prior, a couple of days prior, we just finished talking about how do we update things. Thank God. And if we hadn't done that, we'd been like, whoa.
Right.
And then people,
again, that takes discipline to stay on that, cleaning your weapons in the downtime, so to speak.
You're right. And I think for us and our team, and make sure everyone has downtime with their families, but we're also constantly, we have these committees to make sure we're working through every single problem, making sure we're pitching before we meet with the board, make sure we're pitching to each other before we meet with the executives. That way unless you've been doing the same thing and you can speak extemporaneously about it because you're so well versed in it, fine. But you get prepared every single time you meet with people, because they're going to be asking questions. What can I throw some curveballs? And you're better for it as a result. You really are. So
yeah, man, what was that? What was it like with the fires?
For us, I woke up, I was in downtown LA, and our new CEO came on board, and I think for us, we're both going, what's going on? And I just got off the phone with my team. Hey, we're putting the things in action. We've got to get to phone calls. Beepers are going out to check in where everyone is located, or is everyone okay? And I remember her being so calm, said, Todd, what do we do next? Well, we have a call that's going to be repurposed. This will start at a certain time. That gives us plenty of time to get everyone together. We'll have you get on the call, and we'll start our process, and we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. Yes, we are. And thank you for remaining calm as well, because we can't freak out right now, because we can't do anything about it. We can't turn the fires. Yeah, right. We got to make sure, where are all our people? Are they safe? We had a very small number of people who lost their homes, but we rallied around because we knew exactly where everybody was. We didn't lose anybody, thank God.
Thank God, yeah.
And so we were all very fortunate now that some of our locations where we had care provided for our members, yes. Some were lost, some were closed temporarily. But we made sure it was an interesting time, to say the least, and smelling. And we dealt with it in San Francisco too, with all the fires in Napa and Sonoma, that the fire season, if you will. And it was like, oh my God, what's going on? And so for us, we just rallied together as an exec team. It was amazing because we were prepared for it. We knew how to work with each other. We understood each other. We weren't new to each other. Even if we were, we learned how to I was relatively new myself. So it was interesting to see how we all just came together, because we're all professionals and all disciplined. We had a plan. We knew what to do. And that's the best thing you can ask for. If you didn't have one, well, that's a different conversation.
It's a lot harder to be calm if you don't have one. But it sounds like you telling her we're going to be okay really added a lot of value to her in that moment.
It did. And it's for our first time working together. We met before as we were, getting to know all the executives with the new CEO. But for any new CEO coming on board to deal with that happening, hell, look at President Bush. 9/11 happened. Geez, you didn't expect it to happen. I can't even imagine what that's like. Or the attack in Hawaii, Pearl Harbor. I can't imagine what those things are like. Those events that take place that are life changing, and especially for the county of LA, was life changing for a number of people. And I've known folks who did lose houses, and again, luckily I didn't have anyone lose anybody. But yeah, it was traumatic for a lot of people,
Totally.
and we were lucky that we didn't have as much damage as we thought we would have. So,
I'd like to kind of compare, like, when there's a compliance violation that's causing this panic, as opposed to a fire that's causing panic. How do we maintain the response that you gave to the fire? And what I'm trying to get at is, like, the fire is obviously outside of your control. You couldn't control that as a compliance officer, obviously. But I have found that I've done 200 of these conversations, and I found, just, anecdotally, sometimes when there's a violation, it's like a different panic, because it's like, did I cause this, or did my negligence, or is there something else I could have done to avoid it? And I heard this frame recently that, compliance is not responsible for, the compliance department is not responsible for compliance, because the compliance is a function of behaviors that are done by human beings, many times, usually outside of the department. So
right.
How do you, what advice would you give to someone to keep that kind of clarity between where the responsibility lies, and maintain that calm in the chaos, or calm in the, in that moment of panic? Because you said it before, I can't show up as this frenetic, frantic, maybe that's the same word, this frenetic energy, when what we can do is, what we can do to add the most value is be that guard, or be that guardian, or that guide, or that Sherpa, through the chaos.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think what I found, and I learned this early on, there's some things that are in your control and some things are not, and they're out of your control. And when I look at the need for calm, in this case, you had a regulation that came in, or an executive order. What do? Well, first, take a deep breath, review it. Because, some changes are immediate, but then you have to make that effective. And they have to give you so much time to be effective.
Right.
And having seen this before, they can also change like that. Someone could put an injunction in and stop it. So knowing that, the experience that I've had, but telling folks who are new in this role or getting into it, the most important thing is remain calm. You have to have, if you don't have a chief legal officer or a counterpart, if you are the chief legal officer and compliance and ethics, you're wearing lots of hats, one, and God bless you. But secondly, you think, okay, you got to work with your most important person with you on your right hand to say, let's assess this. What do we need? And I do. When we've had these changes come in, for California, we have these what's called APLs, or HMS memos, and it's adding change and responsibilities to the organization to make things different, add new reporting. What do you need to do to make it happen, to be compliant with the state? Okay. So we have this whole process around change control, effective change management when it comes to this. So we have a mechanism to ingest the information, review it, validate it, high risk, low risk, who's involved, and triage it first. That way we don't create panic within the operation. It's the most important thing we do. Because we saw it with the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, when the legislation came down, the 15,000 pages or whatever it was, or I think it was more than that, obviously. But in all the changes that came after that, what happened? You had to have speed readers. Now, the advent of AI, that's making a lot of things easier to ingest, to discern, and compare. The one thing I've learned too recently, which has been great about using artificial intelligence for, especially in our field, here was the old legislation or regulation. Here's new ones that have a tie to them. What's different? Because sometimes you get lost in the words.
Totally.
And all the preamble that goes in there and all the other things that are part of the change. It's noise. It's like, what really changed? And then, do we have policies that affect that and support? Yes. Okay, cool. So what's changed really? Oh, I report differently, or add one more monitoring report. Okay, talk to IT. Let's make sure data's there. So it's, again, just let's take a step back and assess before you react. That's the best advice I can say. Just take a step back, read it, unless you got guys showing up. I tell this to one of my friends who was going through an interview process, and he goes, "Guys are at my door. Are they wearing windbreakers or two-piece suit? Two-piece suit. You're okay. They're wearing windbreakers. Are the letters in the back?
Start shredding.
G or C. You need to call your lawyer right away." So so I think that's where just calm, assess, and then check before you go react. And I think that's versus react right away. You don't want to do that.
I think that's exactly spot on. And I'm going through this. I'm doing this podcast series with Tom Fox, who just wrote a book about AI. And I just left Compliance Week, and like, I love AI. I think it's such a
awesome.
Such a point of leverage for us. But I've just been so shocked at the reticence our industry. I'm talking macro, broad brushstroke. Our industry has this, like, I think it's like an irrational reticence and resistance to this technology that can do so much for us. And to your point, like, our value is not in combing through the regulation. Our value is in, like, well, what do we do? Like, what's the bottom line, and what do we have to do with it? And like, this is such, on the episode we just did, I was talking about it as like, it's kind of a time machine. We can like cut out all of this time where you don't have to get caught up in the words, and you can just get down to like, oh, I just have to report different. Okay, let me make sure that IT sends the email to this other place, or you know what I'm saying? Like, it can just cut out so much of the noise, and we can spend so much more of our time doing the things that actually add the most value.
You're absolutely right. And one of the things I found, though, especially in the healthcare field, everyone's worried about, oh my God, PHI or PII.
Don't put it in there. How about that?
Privileged information. How about, don't turn it on for that conversation.
Right.
So I get where you want to have it turned on so you can listen and review it, but then shut the doggone thing out. Don't do automatic send outs. There's a lot of controls you can put in place.
Right.
And step back. What are you doing with it? What's the intent? It's not rocket science.
The same answer. Yeah.
It's the same bloody thing. And so I think what we found too, I love it because for me, I'll take a look at, summarize these 100 pages into 5 bullet points to give to the executives. I go, 5 key elements of this. Oh, wow. Okay. That's a little too, cogent.
Let's do 10.
There's cogent, there's effectiveness. like, okay, I'm losing. I think on 100 pages is probably more information there, but maybe they're right. So, and that's an extreme example, of course, but I think the idea is like, okay, how do you want to use it? Because sometimes you do need that response. Like, totally. I need talking points for a discussion with whomever, right? Okay. So now there are new tools out there, especially in our field in healthcare. We're seeing healthcare compliance. They're helping clinicians and practitioners like myself, where we go, okay, you're in a secure box. All the regulations are in there. All the other policies you have are in there. All the audits are in there. So you can say, okay, you're in a controlled environment, so you don't have all this outside noise where you pick up an ad for ice cream, Ben and Jerry's. So you don't have that to worry about. It's just It's contained. So those systems exist, and it's wonderful because now my people who are highly trained, highly skilled, and they can spend more time thinking about providing an informed opinion about something versus an uninformed, scattered opinion and going, I need more time. What? So I think the idea is it's allowing people like ourselves, especially the teams that some have a legal background, some don't, some have a clinical background, some don't, some are just finance folks, some are just general practitioners of compliance. They allow it to be more effective that way because of AI. Now you have to test it. Just like adding the 6th finger on an AI, design of somebody, or 5 heads or 2 heads. You see them on Facebook or Instagram. I know I'm dating myself, but the idea is there. It can happen, and it can be helpful. And don't be afraid. Check with your legal department. Check with the compliance as a compliance officer. Look at the rules. But yeah, they exist. You can turn it on and off, and how you manage it. So it's for some people they're scared. To others, I love it because for me, and I'll be brief about this. When you look at all the grievances that may happen in a health plan, to be able to comb the whole thing and be able to strata that information in a more meaningful way of the unstructured data versus the triage process that happens, like who called, what kind of person, what, So the 10, 7 elements that exist there for the individual, but there's no color to it at all. It's still black and white, but you get this beautiful set of information that tells you why they are aggrieved. You go, oh my God, we're missing all that. And
there's a trend here. There's something, you can sort, it's so powerful, especially in this kind of guardian role that we're in, to be able to process a ton of data and turn that into information that we can take action on. That's where the magic in our role is. That's where we provide the most value. Not just, to your point, that sort of black and white, this is the trend line. There's so much information in that unstructured data that now we can start to get some insights, form some hypotheses that we can test with some actions to see if that can start to move the needle.
Yeah. Now, I do recommend as new chiefs or new leaders, great look at it before you send it.
Oh, yes.
There's a little piece at the very end that says 4.0, or whatever, ChatGPT, or whatever you use as your AI platform that has a little, marker, ink mark on it. Get rid of it, validate it so you don't say something that you shouldn't have said in there.
But if you have a junior staff member on your team that's helping you get ready for the board meeting, for example, you would never send those slides out without looking at it. You would go through and you would edit it and you would say, okay, I'm going to change these kinds of things. And I think if we can think about this tool more as a junior staff member or as a brainstorming partner, not as a black box trading mechanism where you just kind of press play and cross your fingers and you hope that the way you coded the black box is going to end up generating, a return. It's way closer to the first thing I described than, this sort of blind press the button and hope that it works. And I think when we treat it like a black box, trading program, it causes risk averse people who disproportionately oversample into our field to be averse to it. And it's now is not the time for us to be averse to something that can literally change within weeks, how we're viewed within the organization and how we're directing our efforts toward the things that are going to move the needle the most.
I'll give a good example. I'm working with a small startup as an advisor, and it's a large problem to solve. They're trying to do around connected cities. And with that, we're looking at all these various projects. And I'm thinking, well, let's take the narrative of each of these projects, pump them into ChatGPT, run a financial pro forma on each one of these in these areas based on these parameters. Boom.
Done.
Okay, refine it. It's done because a pro forma is a pro forma, right? Now test the math, of course. The maths need to be, make sense.
It has to add up, all that, of course.
Yeah, exactly. So, and being a finance guy, I've done financial pro formas and models to say, okay, you need to tweak this a little differently, but it gets you close. And so that's what you're looking for. It's skipping all of the research and all the pain of trying to put something together. He has something very cogent you can put together, and it can be meaningful to talk to investors or talk to other members of the team of what you're trying to do. And that's the beauty of it all. It's wow, it's even going down to one of our members had to go fly down to Uruguay and talk about something with the president, the outgoing president then, and looking at putting a spaceport down there. And that's kind of cool. I do healthcare and I do this other stuff. But this was amazing where we talked about, wow, this AI stuff was so important for us to help us understand a different viewpoint around this and being more meaningful. So don't be afraid.
Yeah, I think that's right. One thing I wanted to say and want to get your perspective on quick is the level of panic in our space right now about the executive order about the FCPA, I think, is an interesting picture because to your point, my picture of the fully ascended master, ethics and compliance officer is exactly that, sort of calm in the storm, and the reliance on, hey, it's not our plan, it's our ability to plan, and it's the sea legs that we developed through all the waves of change that we've already ridden. And you talked about, hey, when a new regulation is coming out, we need to not be in a panic, but we need to be able to kind of sort through it and know that there's going to be time before we're held accountable to it and all those kinds of things. Right. All that can be a foundation for the calm that is going to drive the effectiveness that we're all kind of striving toward. I find it kind of interesting that, again, this is broad brushstroke macro level. that there's this sort of irrational panic about this executive order. I heard, when it first came out, I was hearing chatter like, well, I guess fraud's back in play, or like compliance is going away. And I'm just thinking like, well, fraud is still like illegal, and you can still get sued, and there's still like myriad other like regulations that we have to comply with, whatever. And I just find it interesting that, like, again, this is so macro, but like, that vibe is the antithesis of like the true effective compliance officer. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying. And it's so funny when SOX came down to all of us back early days. And I remember being a controller and a finance leader for Marriott and going, wait, we do this already.
We already do it. Exactly.
This is not going to change like the controls. Yeah, we look at the controls. We look at the materiality of the controls. Like, what?
Yeah, you're already passing audits.
Like what? So it's interesting when it came out, and you're absolutely right. Just because the U.S. says something doesn't mean, and I've had to deal with the money moving around from France or from other countries into France to UK to the United States, and the myriad accounts that happen between those entities. And you go and looking at the MT-103s or whatever it may be, and are they fraud or not? Wire fraud is still wire fraud, So
right.
OFAC hasn't been disbanded. But it's just whatever. There's things that are illegal, they're still illegal. And so I think you're right. And that's where the common, we had this meeting of a bunch of chiefs on legal and compliance related to this. And some of us looked at each other going, well, especially more experienced guys go, well, it's still illegal to steal and to defraud, period. So
what's changed?
I can talk to DOJ about that if you want to, but nothing's really changed. Yeah.
And I mean, if you actually read the executive order, it's pushing more power down to the states. So, I mean, you could argue that it's almost going to be worse because now there's this new power at the state, at the state level, and now there's more eyes on it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just,
that's right.
It's so crazy to get caught up in the noise in the chatter. To your point, we have to be able to sort through that if we're going to be that sort of that calm Sherpa. Like if you're climbing, Everest and a storm comes and your Sherpa starts panicking, you picked the wrong Sherpa. You know what I mean?
That's right. And, having climbed a few mountains, especially as a 14ers in Colorado, which I miss Colorado. It's a lovely state. But you're right. You don't want to panic. Being in the field, seeing someone get hurt, you don't panic. Hunting, whatever, someone hit you with my buddy, got arrested solo, passed away not recently. But, he accidentally, stabbed me as we're cleaning stuff. I go, dude, just calm. It's okay. I know how to take care of myself. Don't freak out.
Right.
I'm okay. Right. Okay. Give me a bottle of scotch. We'll be good. So,
we'll call it even.
We'll call it even, brother. So, it just, it's okay. Remain calm.
Well, you know what? I could talk to you for another hour. We didn't even get to talk about the finance stuff or your full journey, but man, this was really a phenomenal episode. Thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to join again. Thank you, Nick, for the time.
See you next time.